So a notebook is something that you can create in a workspace if you have Fabric. Notebooks are not something you can use if you only have Power BI Pro or PPU. You can only create it in a Fabric workspace. So if we select New Item, we can create a notebook, which will allow us to open up the notebook and start to write code. And that's indeed, in simple terms, what a notebook is. As its name suggests, it's a notebook, or like a kind of scrollable experience, a document, if you will, for you to have code. Now, let's focus on this part of the notebook here. So we're looking at a notebook on the screen, and we can see that the notebook canvas, if you would call it that here, has this scrollable space that's broken up into cells. This is an example of a cell that contains markdown text that explains and documents what we're doing. This is another markdown cell, and this is a cell with some Python code. So what you do in a notebook is you can write either plain text or text in markdown to explain things, to document the notebook, what it's doing, to explain results, to explain and walk through methodologies. And you also write code, like Python code or PySpark. But it doesn't necessarily have to be Python code. It could be a number of other languages, including SQL, R, and even Scala. So depending on the languages that you know or that you're familiar with, you can write code in order to do a number of things. And you might be thinking like, okay, but I don't know any of these programming languages. Well, you'll have to bear with me because there are a lot of things in Fabric, a lot of tools that make this really, really easy for you. So if you've never written a single line of Python code before, I promise you that this still could be relevant for you, and it's definitely something that you still could be able to leverage. So let's walk through in a little bit more detail what we're looking at here on the screen. Well, we're looking at some Python code here, and this Python code is actually importing a library from semantic-link, the SemPy library, and we're reading a table from a semantic model called our products table. We're selecting a few columns, and then we're going to look at those columns, the first 3 rows in a data frame, which is just basically a table underneath the cell. So when we run this code, it does something. It could display an output beneath the cell, but it could also do something else more functional. For example, it could write an output to a lakehouse, which we can connect to here in the Notebook Explorer. So we've connected to a lakehouse, and we could do some transformations of our data and then create a new table or a new file, which we could use later, either in the notebook or in Power BI, for example. So notebooks can be used, number one, to transform data. And they're very, very powerful and efficient to do this, not only from a cost and resource perspective, but also in terms of the capabilities, what you can do. And this is particularly true because you have access to something called Data Wrangler, which is essentially like a Python Power Query. And we'll show you an example of that later. Now, what you can also do is you can transform data. So if we scroll down a bit further, we have some warnings here, but we can create visualizations, static and dynamic interactive visualizations to explore our data, analyze our data ad hoc. So you can analyze data in notebooks. And this is an example of an analysis on our products by price, cost, and profit after we've done some basic transformations. So we can transform data, we can analyze and visualize that data, but we can also do things that are more practical. For instance, we can manage the stuff in Fabric. We can make changes to models, we can view metadata properties, we can change settings, and so on and so forth. And this allows us to scale and automate a lot of tasks. We'll show you examples later in this course where, for example, you can save patterns from your model and apply them to multiple models at once, scan them for best practice violations, and you can even mass format reports. So you can do things like replacing fields, changing colors, swapping images. Really, the sky is the limit. And that's because you can programmatically interact with the definitions of your items in Fabric and all the different features that you have in Fabric. So a notebook is kind of like this multi-tool that you can use to be able to leverage a number of different things, not just your data that's in Fabric and not just the data in your other data sources. So transforming that data, landing it in Fabric, analyzing it, visualizing it, but also managing this stuff inside of Fabric, auditing it, helping you with administrative tasks, helping you with governance tasks, helping you follow up on whether your stuff is being used or just to scale development. There's a lot of potential. So let's look in a bit more practical detail about the user interface. How do we run this code? Well, we could push this play button, which is going to run it, or we could run all of the cells in the notebook at once. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this code. And while it's running, we can see that it's running here, how long it's taking, and we also see which language we're using or which kernel we're using here. So it's going to show the output down below. And we can also clear or hide that output if we wish, as well as changing the height. So we get this interactive option to kind of see what's happening and a lot of options to be able to work with this code, to work with those cells. Every time we're running that code, we're using resources in Fabric, but in general, notebooks can be very cost efficient. Now, what if you want to write this code in VS Code? Like if you're familiar with VS Code, you want to use GitHub Copilot, you can do that as well. You can open it in VS Code, and you can also leverage Copilot in Fabric. So those are two options that are important for you to know. We're not going to talk about AutoML or add to pipeline, but it is described in the bottom of this course if you just scroll a bit farther below the video. So what else are we looking at here? Well, when we're running a notebook, we have a session that's open, and we can stop that session if we wish. A session is just basically going to use those cloud compute resources from Fabric so that we can execute our code. So when we're writing this code, we can leverage these LLM tools to help us, or we can just write the code from what we know. And when we're done, we can work with other people or while we're developing the notebook, but we can also share it with others in our organization. So notebooks are actually something that we can share. We can create links and share it just like how we could with reports, and we can set permissions. We can set share permissions, allow people the ability to change the notebook, and allow the ability of people to run it. So if I only want people to run that code, I can just give them run permissions, for instance. And notebooks are also something I can include in Fabric org apps. So if I create an analysis like this, and I want to share it with other people, I have multiple different ways to do that. I can also, once they share the notebook, create comments so that people can create comments and tag me. I have version history of the notebook so I can see what's changed over time. And I can also change the notebook, the default view, so that it's view only, run only, or whether it's possible to make edits or to develop it. I can even work together with other people synchronously so that I can have a co-editing experience. If I can get this to stay here. So I can collaborate in real time automatically when multiple people have the notebook open. So we can be making changes in different parts of the notebook at the same time so that we can, better collaborate to get stuff done or to leave comments and so on and so forth. So in summary, a notebook is an item in Fabric. It is a kind of document where you can write things like in Markdown, so descriptions and documentation and explanations. And typically that's explaining what you're doing with code because you write code. A notebook is broken out into sections called cells, and you can run those cells either individually or as a group or all together. You can schedule a notebook to run like you would schedule a dataset refresh in order to automate its outputs. And those outputs could be simple analyses, but it could also be data outputs if you're transforming data, but it could also be something more practical, like using an API, making a change to something, managing a model or a report. So there's a lot of potential for you to be able to automate and streamline tasks by using the notebooks. And tools in Fabric help make that possible. And we'll talk about two of these tools in this course, semantic-link and semantic-link-labs, which are packages in Python exclusive to notebooks in Fabric, which allow you to be able to do more and improve your efficiency and your productivity. But we'll talk more about that in the later modules. For now, this is just a simple introduction. So I'll see you in the next video.